Hello, kiddies. This is the Crypt Keeper, and you're listening to Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. Be careful what you ask for. You may get it.
College Basketball Creeps by Togpie77. I've never shared this story with anyone. I was always too afraid to be judged for it, so it's something I buried down until my friend brought it up the other day. We both have daughters, and we're talking about how we could educate them on being safe when they are teenagers and experimenting with partying. When my best friend and I were 17 years old, we went to the beach for spring break with a couple of our guy friends. My friend was talking to this guy she had met through mutual friends, and he wanted us to meet up with him at a house that he and his friends had rented together. Our guy friends had ditched us to meet girls, so we decided to go ahead and go to her friend's house to hang out with them. When we got there, it was the middle of the day, and he took us inside and introduced us to everyone. Turns out, almost all the guys were on a basketball team of the same university. We all hung out and they were all drinking. My friend and I were not. One guy came out with 2 glasses of what appeared to be whiskey and coke, and against my better judgment, I started to sip it, as did my friend. There was one guy who appeared to not be athletic, and he was the only person at the house who was not friendly towards us. I'll call him Mike. Suddenly, I started to feel very buzzed. We were laughing and talking, and one guy asked me to put on his jersey. I grabbed it and put it on over my clothes. "No. Take off your clothes and put it on," he said in an aggressive tone. I was feeling more tipsy at this point, and I knew something was very wrong. Our parents had let us drink with them multiple times. I knew what it was like to be drunk. I knew how much I could handle before I was drunk, and one drink never made me feel like I was getting wasted. "Quit babysitting that drink. Drink up, weakling," one guy said, and everyone laughed. Even though I had stopped drinking, I could still feel more and more buzzed, especially since our drink barely tasted of any whiskey. My dad always had whiskey at home, and we would drink a couple whiskey Pepsis on occasion. I would feel relaxed, but this was much different. "We should go. Our friends are waiting for us," I said, and headed for the door, and a couple of guys stood in front of us. No, you can't leave. Come sit down over here for a little bit," as they ushered us back to the couch. This sinking feeling hit my gut, and I knew we were on borrowed time. Trying to stay calm, I laughed and said, "I need to pee. Come with me." I grabbed my friend's hand, and we went to the restroom together. We both stood there, and we had already read each other's minds. I put my hands on her head and looked her in the eyes so we could both focus. "We need to leave now," I said. Our phones both had spotty service all over the island, I'm guessing because there was so many people packed on it. I said, "Take my keys, tell them you're going to get your purse, and I'll stay here. You go get the guys and come back for me." As I opened the door, Mike was standing there. My heart sank. He was rude to us earlier, and he probably heard us talking. Instead, he said, "Follow me and be quiet." Something inside me trusted him with everything I had in that moment. We followed him down the hallway to a garage and out to the front driveway. "Hurry up, get out of here now," he said. We ran to the car and I drove off to our hotel. I remember driving, but I don't remember getting to our condo. The rest of the story is from our guys' friends telling us what happened. Apparently, we walked in, and the guys asked us where we had been because it was already nighttime and we were supposed to meet up to barbecue some weenies. They said we didn't say a word, just walked to our room and closed the door and passed out. We didn't come to until the next day, and both of us had excruciating headaches, as if we had drunk a whole bottle of cheap vodka by ourselves. To the basketball douchebags who tried to take advantage of 2 teenage girls, let's never meet again, or I will kick you in the dick. And thank you, Mike. I hope you're out there hearing this, and you remember the brunette and blonde little girls you saved that day on the island.
The Campus Psycho, submitted by Eric. Eric is not my real name, but you'll see why I'm going by that soon. This is true, and it happened when I was in school. I heard the story about the Marine you did not too long ago, and I thought I would share something crazy that happened to me when I ended up meeting up with a psychopath. I was a freshman in college, and this was around 1993. I lived in an all-guy dorm at a school in South Carolina, and I'm not going to say which one. This was in the late fall, and I'll never forget the day because our RD bought a pay-per-view fight for the dorm, and we were all going to watch it in the common room. That afternoon, I had everything all planned out. I had to work my job on campus as part of my aid to pay for school, and then I was going to hit the fitness center, jog across campus, and then get ready for the fight. I knew there was going to be a couple of beers involved too, so hey, this was going to be really cool, I thought. My job was easy that day, and I finished up around 4, ran to the weight room and worked out, then jogged back to my dorm, just like I thought I would. It was a great day, and I knew it was only going to get better. At least, that's what I thought then. I'm going to jump back a couple of months to the beginning of school. I was taking an Intro to Sociology course, and I met this girl. She was cute, but kind of odd. She sat in front of me almost every class for the first couple of weeks, but then started coming in after me and sitting down right next to me. This was a lecture hall with about 300 seats, and there were only like 80 people in the class, so it was odd for people to sit next to one another unless they were friends or whatever. So, one day, she, let's call her Anne, started talking to me before the prof started doing his thing, and we exchanged names. I'm a pretty outgoing guy, so I was never shy talking to girls and stuff, but while she started the conversation, she was reluctant to answer any of my questions about her. The same thing happened again the next class, but this time afterwards we left the hall talking more, and Anne was beginning to lighten up a little bit. The next class in Soch was canceled. Hell yeah, Nintendo time. Her dorm was next to mine, and she was walking the same way. We kept chatting until we got to her dorm, and then she just stopped and kind of stared at me. I smiled back and was all like, okay. Then she just turned around and went into her dorm without saying another word. I shook my head and went to my room. My roommate was there, and I told him about Anne. His girlfriend lived in the same dorm as her, and he said he'd ask his woman about Anne. We played some Tecmo football on my Nintendo for a while, and I just forgot about it. For the next few Soch classes, I didn't see Anne. Mind you, I wasn't totally looking for her, but with only 80 people in a 300-seat auditorium, it's kind of easy to notice who was there and who wasn't. When I got back to my room later that day, Anne was sitting outside of my dorm room door. I said hi and something cheesy like, "Hey, looking for me?" She stood up and stared at me like she had the last time I saw her. She didn't say anything, so I finally opened my door and asked if she wanted to come in. Blank stare, followed by a nod. I went into my room and she quickly went over to my bed and sat down. "So, what's up? I noticed you haven't been in class."
You did? Really?
She said this very eagerly. It was kind of weird. "Yeah, you're not missing that much. The class is boring. I space out a lot and don't pay attention. But it is a pretty easy course, really, don't you think?"
I don't pay attention to it either. I'm usually focused on something else.
She said with a small laugh. "Oh, really? Like what? Another class? I sometimes do my homework for other classes while I'm sitting in there." She stared at me again and didn't say anything for like a minute. We just stood looking at each other's faces.
Never mind. Forget it.
She said finally and quietly. She started tapping her feet on the floor, back and forth like tap dancing. Again, silence between us, and just staring. "Okay, that's cool," I said. I started asking her questions about where she was from and all that stupid small talk we do with people we don't really know. She actually started talking, and a little of the weirdness went away. I went to my mini-fridge and got out 2 bottles of water and gave one to Anne. We talked about school and bullshit, and after a while she took the bottle out of my hand and put it up to her face and ran her tongue around the rim of it and handed it back. I'm not fucking joking. She licked my water bottle. She smiled this strange smile at me and slowly said,
"You're very pretty, Eric."
Who the fuck tells a guy he's pretty? Things were quickly going back to being weird again. I said thanks and put my water bottle down on my desk.
"Can I have that?"
asked Anne. Okay, I guess. Things were beyond weird now. Things were actually uncomfortable.
Would you like to eat at the dining hall tonight with me?
I'm actually meeting some guys tonight, but maybe another time would be cool, I said. Anne didn't say anything. She just stood up and put her hand out to me and touched my face. Okay, I'm a man's man, but I kind of backed up a little and bumped into my desk and chair.
Do you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, I do, back home. Kim goes to college there.
Are you two serious boyfriend and girlfriend?
I guess so. We've been together since our sophomore year of high school. She got a scholarship to play soccer there, so that's why we're long distance now. I pointed to a picture of us that I had on my desk.
Oh. Well, I guess I should go.
She picked up my water bottle and went to the door. She didn't turn around, but right before she left, she whispered,
When I'm in sociology, I think about you, Eric.
She then opened the door and left, never looking at me once again. I stood there wondering what the hell had just happened. My roommate came in and I told him what was going on, and he said, Dude, that girl's a little fucked up. My girlfriend says she doesn't really talk to anyone, and her roommate said she never sleeps. Glad she likes you and not me, brother. He laughed and turned on my TV. After this, I only saw Anne in class, but she never sat near me and was always gone before class ended. Then the weird things started to happen. I would get these strange emails with poems that would start out about love and then end in violence, like people getting killed or hurt or whatever. Now, back then, practically nobody had a computer in their room, so we went to these labs and used computers there. The only time I ever used email was to email my friends and get assignments from professors. It wasn't like today where you can attach stuff like pictures and documents. Anyway, I knew it had to be Anne because I had my girlfriend's email and this wasn't it. I told Kim about Anne and she teased me saying that I was the desire of all the girls at my school. Yeah, right. One day I left Soc class to take a leak, and when I came back to my seat, my notebook was gone. And 2 days later it was back on the desk I had sat in the last time, and the words I love you were on the cover in what I think was lipstick. And it wasn't ink, and it was kind of greasy. I looked around the room and saw Anne on the far side, not looking at me or anything. It had to have been her. The next day my roommate said there were some messages for me on her answering machine, and he was grinning. Who was it from? Yeah, you guessed it. Anne. I'm paraphrasing some of this because it's been a while, but I do remember most of it. My roommate does too, and we still talk about it.
Hi, Eric. I just wanted to say hi and that I miss talking to you. I'd like to talk to you. Can we have a coffee or something? I have something I want to tell you. Call me back when you can. Bye.
Then...
Hi, Eric. I just got back and didn't see a call from you, so I thought I'd call you again. So call me, okay? I don't want you to get the wrong impression, and I'm not trying to break you and your girlfriend up. I just miss talking to you. Call me.
What the hell? Wrong impression? And did she really think she could split me and Kim up? Why even bring that up? Next message.
Hi, Eric. It's me, Anne. Please let me know if you want to talk, because I want to tell you something. I want to tell you that I like you. More than like you, Eric. I want you.
Message 4.
I want you inside me, Eric. I need you. And I don't care about your girlfriend. She doesn't have to know. I just want you. Call me, Eric. I'll be waiting.
My roommate was holding back laughter, and I said, You're an asshole. You're really enjoying this, aren't you? He burst out laughing, and I told him that it really wasn't that funny. He said, Yeah, it is. You're the asshole for not seeing that it's funny. And just then some guys from down the hall came asking what was so funny, what we were laughing about. So, asshole roommate plays them the messages, and they were all dying, and I started to laugh too, but was still a little concerned Anne was thinking this way. She didn't even know me. I didn't call her back and didn't get any more messages, but one morning I was heading to the shower, and when I got back to my room, someone had tied a rubber around my door handle, and it was full of what I had hoped were egg whites. I thought it was the guys that did it, but no one ever brought it up or laughed about it. When I said, Good one, guys, they were all like, What the fuck are you talking about? Then I started getting these drawings slipped into my room. They were really good, I have to admit. They were usually of two people sitting together or whatever, romantic poses, and they all had the words us written on them. Again, they had to have been from Anne. I told Kim everything about it, and she told me not to worry. I never saw Anne in class ever again, but she did call and leave messages. She never called when I was actually in my room, though, like at night or on the weekends. One message was just her saying my name over and over for like 3 minutes. Finally, one day I came back from my work job and I realized things were not good. The picture I had showed Anne of me and Kim was stuck in my room door with a knife. This is all true, guys. I didn't touch anything and went to get my RA, who then took me to the RD's office so I could fill a report out. That's when I told them about the phone calls and stuff, but because no one could prove anything, it went nowhere. I'll admit it now, as I watched the campus police taking the knife in the picture, I was scared. So now we're back to the beginning of my story. I ran up the stairs to my dorm and saw the big screen set up in the common room was getting more excited about the fight. I saw my RA and RD in the main office with a campus police officer and a county sheriff. The campus cop said something to my RD and he nodded and then caught my eye and waved me over. So I went into the office. The sheriff told me to take a seat, and I did. And I remember getting nervous thinking that I was in trouble for having a beer or, a little weed in my room. That's not what they were there for, but I'm sure all of you have been pulled over or had the cops talk to you and you immediately get that scared feeling. Do you know Anne? Her last name. Sort of. She's in my sociology class, and I've talked with her a couple of times. Why? What's going on? Can you tell us where you were this afternoon? Yeah, I said. I told them about my job, and then the gym, and then jogging back to the dorm. You look a little sweaty there, partner. Sure you didn't go anywhere else? Can people verify where you were? I didn't say anything, suddenly thinking something serious was up. What's this all about? And yeah, there are lots of people who saw me at the fitness center, and my boss can verify that I was at work. What the fuck's going on here? The cops looked at one another, and I was getting that lightheaded feeling, and my stomach was starting to turn over. They asked me more questions about where I was and how I spent my time at school, and I think I just sat there. Son, we have a female in the infirmary right now who says you attacked her and tried to rape her in the stairwell of her dorm. I almost shit my pants. They kept talking and told me that I wasn't under arrest, but I needed to go with them to the sheriff's station. I remember wanting to cry. Yeah, real manly, I know, but I did. I told them that I didn't want to go, that I didn't do anything, and that I needed to talk to my parents. They said they would get me in touch with them, but I still had to go with them. I was scared shitless. I was being accused of rape. We walked out to a cruiser, and some of my dorm friends were outside and saw me getting into the car. They all just stood there staring, and I looked back at them wanting to scream for them to help me, but I knew they couldn't. After we got to the station, my parents called. My RD had called them and told them what was up, and I'm not going to go into the whole account of what happened there, but my parents did eventually show up with a lawyer, and things got pretty intense. Anne had been found in a stairwell with all these cuts on her arms and legs. Her face had been mashed up too, and I guess there was blood all over her clothes. My parents didn't buy the accusation, and I don't think the police did either, but procedure is procedure, I guess. My parents took me home and wanted me to stay there for a few days, and the police said that would be okay as long as I didn't leave the state and would have to come back if they needed to ask me more questions. When they said that, I was beyond terrified. What was worse was that the word traveled fast, and Kim found out before I even got home. She said she believed I didn't do it, but she was still kind of distant. It took a little while to get over her boyfriend being accused of being a rapist. Alright, to make this really long story shorter, it turns out that Anne had done everything to herself. She actually cut herself up, and the investigators even figured out she had smashed her face on a door to the stairway and found her own skin cells under her fingertips were from where she had scratched her body. She waited there until someone found her and kept saying my name over and over and screaming no. She had left a threatening message on my answering machine saying something like she was going to have my baby no matter what, and that she was coming over that night to force me to sleep with her. My roommate brought that to the cops' attention, along with all the other stuff she had done. Even the condom was hers, they figured. She had a pack of Trojans of the same type in her room. They also found pictures she had taken of herself masturbating to the picture of me and Kim she had somehow stolen from my room. There were also pictures of me from all over the place. She had taken pictures of me on my job, at the library, social class, dining halls, house parties, you name it. My name wasn't Mud at school, but I felt weird as just about everyone heard about it. No one passed judgment, but I was embarrassed and felt like I was that guy rapist even though I wasn't. After that first semester, I took a semester off and then transferred to the school where Kim was. She slowly got over the fact that I'd been accused, but I graduated and so did she, and a few years later we got married, and have been married for 16 years. I never found out what happened to Anne other than that she wasn't allowed to go back to school, and I think she was hospitalized for a long time. Yeah, no shit. Anyway, that's my true story. Let me tell you, that whole ordeal was scary looking back. From the messages and notes to the accusation and people even thinking you're a rapist, even if they know you're not, is a very, very scary thing. I hope it doesn't happen to anyone else listening to this. Thanks for reading this, and thanks for listening.
Stalker in Community College by Brissa Lena. This happened like 6 or 7 years ago. I played soccer for 1 year in community college after high school. I knew this guy because he worked for the athletics department, and he was another student. Tuesdays and Thursdays, I had a 1-hour gap between classes. This guy noticed me in the library, asked what I was doing there, and I told him I had an hour-long gap, and he started coming regularly to hang out. I didn't mind because he seemed like a normal guy. He wasn't waiting for anything, but he just wanted to hang out. He brought me little gifts a few times, like chocolate and stuff, but he was being a little too sweet for someone that he barely knew, and I wasn't thinking about red flags. With the gifts, I remember he always downplayed it. He'd be like, "They had extra Kit Kat bars today in the office. Do you want some?" He never said that he purposefully bought a Kit Kat for me. I know a lot more about boys now than I knew back then. I think he knew that buying me gifts would be too much, but he still wanted to do it without doing it. The soccer season ended for us before Thanksgiving. The only teams that kept playing after that were going to the playoffs, not us. After Thanksgiving, we had finals. In that brief period after the soccer season and before Thanksgiving, this guy asked me about my classes for second semester. To be honest, I hadn't been super organized with course registration, and I honestly didn't know. And also, the counselors were completely clueless. I didn't tell him that, but I remember saying that I didn't want to have another gap hour like this because it wasted so much time. And I don't think he was happy to hear that. He also asked me if I was going to play another season, and I said no. I needed to manage my time better, and playing soccer every day was not helping. I think my mistake was that I just said too much and unfiltered everything. I used to do that a lot back then, saying too much without thinking about how it could affect other people's feelings. When I told him all this, that was the last Thursday before Thanksgiving. So, no more hour gaps to hang out anymore. We had Thanksgiving break, we took our finals, and we had winter break. Everything was great. Winter break was when the real problems started. In the mornings, this guy literally showed up outside my house while sitting in his car. The first time I didn't believe it was actually him. The second time, I checked and it was. By then it was really clear that we both knew what was going on. He was stalking me. And that wasn't all. I posted on my Instagram stories sometimes about places I was. This guy literally showed up there several times, like girly stores at the mall where he had zero business being. He did lots of things like that. He also started pointing his phone at me like he was taking pictures, and that was even weirder. I basically stopped using social media over this. After winter break, this continued. When my parents were at work, this guy came during the afternoon too. I called the cops a few times, and they went and tried to talk to him. He basically told them that he wasn't going to talk, and that was it. I think the cops wanted to help, but they could never do anything about it because he was careful not to break any laws. Like he didn't trespass, and he didn't make threats, and he didn't show weapons, etc. I have no idea what he's doing now. My guess is that he gave up. Maybe his little obsession kind of became old and he found other things to pay more attention to. At least I hope so. But if he still comes by, I have no idea. I think the most challenging thing is that I couldn't tell my parents, since I knew that all of this would have completely freaked them out.
University Cult Leader by Window Guy 13. I was in my first semester of university. I had just graduated college not too long ago and had entered into a program that, after a while, I would come to resent. During that time with adjusting and taking daily transit an hour and a half away from where I grew up into the big city in order to study was somewhat of a new adventure to me. In a lot of ways, I was just beginning to sprout as my own individual and trying to carve a path for my life while simultaneously opening myself up to new experiences and a new environment. I have longtime friends who go to the same facility as me, but at the time, our schedules wouldn't always line up. This meant that a lot of my days were spent traveling back and forth and walking around the city alone. I really wanted to try and expand my horizon of experiences and friends during this period. In a lot of ways, I was really desiring to find a good community on campus that could help satiate my boredom and loneliness. I can be extremely extroverted, but sometimes I find that it takes a lot out of me to try and actually pursue and maintain friendships that haven't been established years prior. I've made friends before from different classes in college, but ultimately, and I know this makes me an asshole, but I would end up texting less and less until eventually either side would end up ghosting one or the other. Because I'm a busy guy, I don't find myself prioritizing people who I feel like aren't as important to me as others. I know, a shitty thing to say, but nonetheless the truth. One day, however, I met Joel. I was on the phone with my fiancée, and I distinctly remember exactly how it all went down. As I was walking out of the school's Starbucks with a decaf coffee, I had one headphone in, and I was heading to class through a small stretch of underground passageways under the street that connects the school's library building to the actual building that possesses classes. As I was hastily making my way, I saw this short and stout guy, looking roughly my age at the time, 21, with a thick brown beard and a hat on. Our eyes met, and as I was about to simply walk past, he asked me something in a very charismatic and calm tone. "Hey, sorry to bother you. You look like a pretty busy guy. But I was wondering, do you mind doing a survey about religion? It's for one of my classes." To this, I regret answering and wish I had simply continued walking. But at the time, I was becoming more and more compelled by the notion of formal religious institutions and questioning my own religious faith, particularly leaning towards Christianity. "Sure," I replied cordially. He then introduced himself as Joel, and after we went through a small survey pertaining to religious affiliations and perspectives on religions, Joel informed me that a small group of students like himself were planning on getting together as a group and discussing various religions in order to gather new insights and to create a community. Of course, with the prospect of finding some new friends on campus, and also exploring my own spiritual perspectives, I gave him my phone number after he asked for it, and he said that he would contact me in the next following days. Upon entering our first meeting, I sat down in a very crowded place with seats at our school facility and was greeted by Joel, alongside a bunch of other members. They introduced themselves to me and vice versa, and they were all extremely kind to me. We began our small group meeting, and I was a bit shocked to find out that the sole topic that we were to discuss was Christianity. I wasn't aware that we were only going to be discussing Christianity, which was against what he had proposed this group to constitute upon our meeting in the tunnel. That being said, I was still curious enough to continue, and I was accompanied by 3 other young guys of my age, who, after a bit of talking with, I found out we had a lot of similar interests. Joel, who now presented himself as a leader of our study group, relayed how we would be analyzing Christianity through a multi-step program designed to unveil the holy power associated with the religion to us. Since I was curious and wanted to learn more about the religion, as well as having made some newfound friends, I continued to attend this study group for the rest of the semester, in which there were a few circumstances where I questioned Joel's interpretations and was met with hard resistance. It felt like at times my wavering belief in what Joel was saying would be met with straight dismissal as opposed to actual conversation. I continued to brush that off as the group that I was working with got closer. The school's club, which I was now a part of, provided me with exactly what I had wanted. We even went to a church-run event together where I quit vaping, and many individuals reported mystical experiences. Things only started to get concerning with Joel during our one-on-one conversations. I discussed my personal experiences and belief in my newfound religious beliefs, and all of my former spiritual experiences as well. And Joel exposed to me a story and a few incidents that at the time I certainly should have taken as red flags. For example, when he was younger he had gone on a retreat, where when he was in prayer he said that he began to hear the voice of God talk to him. I questioned at first if he was referring to the voice of God as more of a metaphor, but he had reassured me that he literally heard God speak to him before. When he told me this, I became a bit unnerved. At the helm of this community was Joel, but in all other senses, I was satisfied with who I was and what we were doing together. Though I am not entirely dismissive of strange occurrences, especially pertaining to spirituality, his experience talking with God in his head came off as uncomfortable for me. He also said that the way he would pray would involve a direct conversation and reply with God. Out of discomfort, I wouldn't prod him on what he meant by this. This, of course, was just the beginning. After the summer had ended, I had found myself in the most religiously devoted state I had ever been in. Throughout the summer, I had had a treacherous injury which made me housebound for months, and to call upon God in a lot of ways for strength. With my newfound devotion, I was elated to fall back into the community that I had nurtured and grown with throughout the last semester relating to something that I found deep joy in. At the first lesson of the semester, something was very different. Joel, as before, was at the helm of our study session, but was now perpetually interrupted by people coming to greet him and give him praise. It was so bad that we literally essentially sat and watched for 20 minutes before we could get on with our lesson as more than 10 people, mostly young men of our age, came to greet this man. As aforementioned, when not unnerving, he was extremely charming and gave the impression that he cared deeply for everyone. Once our lesson began, he introduced us to the second phase of the program. He explained that this was one of the toughest programs of the different levels that there were, as it required even more devotion and, more importantly, an emphasis on sacrifice for those who engaged. He showed us a diagram of a small stick person, and he showed that in this program we would have to accept Jesus as the center of our life. He explained that by making our lives surround Jesus entirely, that we would not be losing something, but be gaining. He also began to go over the notion that sex before marriage is a sin, and if that we were to continue with this program, we would have to make the sacrifice of giving up sex in our relationships, and prove that we weren't. He said that many guys weren't able to continue because of it. I talked about this afterwards with one of the members of this group who, not unlike me, had been in a serious relationship with someone they loved for years. In my personal opinion, though we weren't married on the altar, I knew that both me and this other member felt devoted to our partners as if we were already married in a sense, and we both expressed how Joel's behavior surrounding this was off-putting, controlling, and intrusive. After our lesson, I was a bit dumbfounded by the intensity with which he gave his speech about this new program that we would be engaging in this semester. Joel and I sat down for a few more minutes and talked, in which I expressed experiences of devotion from the summer, and explained my entire catastrophic experience with my injury. He then went on to tell me that at times, he was actually able to know things beforehand. This seemingly random and strange statement shocked me. He said, for example, he was able to know something another member had before they had even mentioned it, and in the way that he described it, it sounded as if he was saying he had some form of mystical foresight. I was a bit jarred, to say the least, though I felt like it would be impolite to question any further. Joel then went on to tell me that he believed that if I successfully completed this program, I was primed to become a teacher for the first program I had done the semester prior, leading others who would join, and that I had a bright future in the organization. In that moment, with what he had laid down on us in the lesson, I felt overwhelmed by his expectations of me. It also became evident that Joel was not a student at our facility. In fact, he was in his mid-30s and had kids. He was actually just part of an organization that recruits people to become Christians and missionaries that works on our campus. This means that he actually lied to me when I first met him. He wasn't a student. There was no group talking about various religions, and his whole purpose was to convert me, to make me join the organization he was a part of. At this point, school began to pick up a lot, and I was also working part-time to help support myself. As I was on the train to head back home the next week, I had forgotten that my second lesson of the program that semester was supposed to happen. So I texted Joel saying, "Hey man, I actually got onto the train and forgot about our lesson. Sorry about that, dude. I'm not going to be able to make it. I also have work later." To which he replied, "Can you get off the train? Try and get here as soon as possible." I was a bit dumbfounded at this question. Since I live an hour and a half away, it wasn't as easy as getting off the train and heading back the opposite direction, and he knew that. He knew the area I live in is remote and a long distance away. I also told him that I had work, which he had plainly disregarded. "No, man. Unfortunately, I can't come. Have a good lesson," I replied, to which he said again, "Come on, man. Just get off the train and come back." At this point, I was annoyed. Not only did I feel like he was commanding me, but that he was also blatantly disregarding the fact that I said no, and that I had work that day. I didn't answer him. I talked with my fiancée about how I was starting to feel about the whole idea ordeal, and how I felt guilty about having feelings of wanting to distance myself from the group, while simultaneously not wanting to lose the community and friends that I had established along the way. My fiancée told me that, by the way, that Joel was acting, and with regards to the things he said, that she was starting to become uncomfortable with the whole situation. I remember sitting in bed thinking about leaving the group and how the prospect made me feel physically ill. After all, I had been given everything I wanted in a community, except that the helm was a seemingly increasingly controlling and persuasive being who was making me and possibly other members more miserable. There was an event the following Friday that was going to be at the church, which was organized by the community. Originally, since many of my friends from this group were going, I intended to go. But alas, I was scheduled by my boss to work that day, so there was no way that I was going to be able to attend. I knew that Joel would be insistent upon me coming anyways, so when Joel texted me reminding me that the event was Friday, I told them that I wasn't able to go because I had work. To this he replied and simply said, "What? Bro, no way. You've got to come. Take work off and find somebody to take your shift. God wants you there." I was expected. He dismissed my decision and also said that I had to be there because God wanted me there, as if he were his mouthpiece. I went on to text him again and inform him, "No, sorry man, I can't do that. I just got a promotion and I have to be there. I hope you guys have a great time anyway." To which he then again replied similarly to what he had before. This was my personal breaking point. He knew the importance of my financial situation, and his dismissal of my personal boundaries as well as his commanding me made me decide to text him explaining that I was done with the group and that I wanted to pursue my own religious exploration without the group from then on. I felt as if he was slowly but surely increasingly controlling me and trying to take what he could, commanding me as if he were the leader of my life in any way possible. It was even up to him if I could fuck my fiancée. He replied with a long paragraph persisting in this sort of overly kind manner that I had to continue with the group, and that it was God's will for me to show up to this event even though I was completely unable to. He was certain that this group was meant for me, and that God had told him that this was where I was supposed to be. After I responded again telling him to stop, and that I would not, he sent me another paragraph of similar length repeating what he would say. No matter what I would say and whenever I would say no, He would overstep my boundaries while maintaining a kind and friendly tone in order to try and push me into submission when I clearly said no. At this point I said I didn't want him to talk to me anymore, to which he replied, "Bro, why? Can we meet up? I want you to explain why you don't want to continue, bro, so we can meet up and do that, and I can get a better sense and we can figure out what we do from there." Even in this, I knew that he was trying to elongate his chance at bringing me back into the group and continuing his reign of control. I said I didn't want to, so he asked again. I decided at that moment I needed to block him. So I did. A semester later, I was walking down the street of my school, and as I walked by a pizza parlor, lo and behold, who came out? Joel walked over to me with one of his friends and said that I was one of his friends to his buddy. I uncomfortably stood there, and his friend went inside for a moment while Joel turned around to look at me and asked with his disarming gentleness, "Did you block me?" I replied, "Yes." He then said, "You should unblock me. That way we can meet up and talk, because I really want to know why you left the group." To which I evidently was frustrated and said, "Okay," and went on my way. That night he texted me on my Instagram insisting we meet up again, and I blocked him there too. In short, I'm thankful for my fiancée, who is the love of my life. Without her, I'm not sure I would have been strong enough to have left the group in his control. The fact of the matter is that there were other guys in that group who had absolutely nobody. They had nothing, and they were prime targets for a charismatic and controlling freak. There were members of that group who were in higher levels, so to speak, who had done all the programs, who seemed as if they were emaciated. But they had become such restricted fundamentalists that their lives and their openness to new experiences were significantly thwarted. Beware of who you let into your life, and just because somebody might be nice to you does not mean that they might not have ulterior motives. Also learn to stand your ground and respect yourself. If you say no, mean it. So Joel, you controlling cult leader, let's not meet again. My haunted campus. Yeah, everybody says all colleges are haunted. Name one that doesn't have its fair share of ghost stories, and I'll show you a school that doesn't teach human students. But my school, you better believe we're haunted. I go to a really small liberal arts school in the Midwest. We're actually pretty famous, and you've probably seen us on TV or read about us in Time magazine or something like that. Most importantly, we're an historic landmark in a town where Civil War landmarks aren't a dime a dozen. Each building on campus has its own ghost stories. There's the new girls' dorm, recently hit by a tornado that was haunted by the ghost of a suicide. Then there's the main hall, which spent some time as a hospital for the wounded and dying as the North fought the South only a few miles away. We can't forget the oldest dorm on campus, where the victims of accidental deaths are said to continue their education, or the old schoolhouse and chapel the school had grafted onto campus, whose doors open and close on their own. The most famous of these are the theater ghosts, and being a theater major, I've heard them all. Our theater was once the gymnasium of the school. It's an interesting feature that gives the classrooms unique things such as a basketball court floor or a swimming pool art gallery. Most of the ghost stories are set around the time of the switch between gymnasium and classroom, placing them around 1965. There was supposedly a girl that drowned in the swimming pool that later became the art studio. Students later nicknamed her Mona, a name that apparently doesn't bother her much. She likes to play jokes on the art students, but the ones she really loves to get are the theater kids. We would be in the middle of rehearsal, usually around 8 or 9 at night, and suddenly the soundboard would go nuts, playing pre-show music from whatever disc was in the machine. The lights dim, though the power is controlled through a locked room, and the campus 2-minute warning bell will ring. And all it takes is a gentle asking of Mona to cut it out, and things will eventually go back to normal. Sometimes we'll be working in the costume shop, which is located above the scenery shop on what is called the Horseshoe. It's a long, dark, curved hallway that stretches above the house that contains the costume shop, dressing rooms, media closet, the sound and light booth, and so on. This hall is painted a combination of dark green and black, and when navigated during a show becomes a tippler's way of lighting instruments, boxes, and plastic gels. Oftentimes, sewing machines will be found unthreaded, and any attempts to thread them will reveal that the bobbins have been pulled out and are sitting on a neat pile beneath whatever fabric had just been worked on. Sharps carrying the last bit of neon pink thread will disappear from the cloth they were kept in, and when Mona is scolded, lightly of course, they will appear 2- or 3-fold, hidden in the folds of the fabric one had just searched through. Many times, people standing in the dressing rooms facing the mirrors will catch the barest glimpse of someone hurrying down the hall, silently, when no one else is in the building. And more disturbingly, someone working alone on the stage can hear chairs being moved in the dressing rooms, even though the horseshoe is locked, and they are the only ones with the keys. Other stories focus on a construction worker who was crushed beneath a steel beam during the construction of the fly system. Students working on the stage for an extended period of time will head over to the connected scenery shop only to find that someone has pushed the doors closed, which is never done because 1, we're lazy, 2, it's a fire hazard, 3, it's the only way to get ventilation into the shop, and 4, we're lazy. Other eerie things happen, such as freshly charged drills wind down after seconds of use, or tools that have been missing for weeks will appear miraculously center stage. Sometimes we had games of theater-wide hide-and-seek at theater parties, and during one of the games, one of the upperclassmen was it, and stopped suddenly left center stage. He reached out in front of him and grabbed at air. We all laughed at him from our hiding places, because though it was dark, it wasn't dark enough that we couldn't tell that there was nobody there. The upperclassman later claimed that he had seen very clearly the shape of one of his classmates standing on the stage, who, when he grabbed for him, laughed and dodged into the legs. Only later did he remember that that particular classmate hadn't come to the party. One night a friend of mine was hanging out between the science building and the main hall at about midnight. This was a place where the old and injured horses were put to death during the Civil War. Suddenly, shrieks were heard echoing off the quad, coming from the main hall, and she and her friends got out of there quickly. Another friend used to work in the basement of the science center until late at night, and was locking up one night when she heard clearly the sounds of a horse whinnying. I myself was walking through the old chapel at 2 a.m, and clearly saw the shapes of small children running around the building through the stained glass. Another friend who lived in the new girls' dorm before it was remodeled due to the damage of the tornado recalled hearing the sound of a heavy trunk dragging across the floor of the storage room above her, from the middle of the room to the window. The room above her? That's where a girl had hung herself from the window. And many people, including myself, who have lived in the oldest dorm on campus, have seen the indistinct figures sitting on the far end of the hall as they return to their rooms late at night. Each hall was mirrored by an identical hall on the floor with it, and the figures always move closer as you move closer to them, and further away as you move away from them. Sightings of these figures weren't restrained to a certain floor, but on all floors at any time between 12 and 5 a.m. Now, these may just be coincidences, and that's maybe exactly what they are. But for those of us who have experienced them, they'll never just be a trick of the eye. We know definitively our school is haunted.